The night was already a disaster before he walked in. The kitchen had sent back 3 orders, my feet ached in the second-hand heels I'd picked up from the thrift store, and my manager, Victor, kept hovering like a vulture, waiting for me to make a mistake. 10 hours into my double shift at Natasha's, an upscale Russian restaurant in Brooklyn that catered to people with more money than I'd seen in a lifetime. And I was running on fumes. "Table 12, Anna," Victor hissed, shoving the leather-bound menus into my hands. "Very important client. Do not mess this up." I nodded mechanically, tucking a strand of my dark hair behind my ear. My grandmother's voice echoed in my head. "Держи голову высоко, Anushka." Keep your head high, Anushka. The memory of my babushka sent a familiar pang through my chest. 3 years since she'd passed, taking with her the last connection to my Russian heritage, and most days I could barely remember her face. But her voice, that I could never forget. I made my way across the dimly lit restaurant, weaving between tables of New York elites draped in designer clothes and dripping with jewelry that cost more than my rent. The air was thick with the scent of rich food, expensive cologne, and wealth, a combination that always made me feel like an imposter in my stiff white shirt and black skirt. And then I saw him. He sat with his back to the wall, facing the entrance, a position that offered a clear view of everyone who entered and exited. Even seated, I could tell he was tall, broad-shouldered beneath an impeccably tailored dark suit that probably cost more than my yearly salary. His face was all sharp angles, high cheekbones, straight nose, a jawline that could cut glass, framed by closely cropped dark hair with the faintest touches of silver at the temples. But it was his eyes that made my stomach clench. Cold, calculating, the color of steel, taking in everything while revealing nothing. He wasn't alone. 2 men flanked him like sentinels, their bulky frames failing to conceal the obvious bulges of concealed weapons beneath their jackets. A 3rd man stood near the entrance, his gaze constantly sweeping the room, hand never far from his inside pocket. I'd worked at Natasha's long enough to recognize his type. We served plenty of wealthy businessmen, but the ones with security details and eyes that never stopped scanning the room weren't just businessmen. They were something else entirely. Drawing a deep breath, I approached the table. "Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to Natasha's. My name is Anna, and I'll be your server tonight." The practiced words fell from my lips with rehearsed ease. "May I start you with some drinks?" The 2 men flanking him didn't acknowledge me, their eyes continuing to scan the room, but he looked up, his gaze sliding over me with clinical detachment, as if assessing a piece of furniture. "Vodka," he said simply, his voice deep and smooth with the faintest trace of an accent. "Beluga Gold Line, chilled, no ice." I nodded, turning my attention to the others, but he cut me off with a flick of his hand. "Just for me. They don't drink on duty." "Of course, sir. I'll be right back with—" "And bring some zakuski," he added, not bothering to look at the menu. "Whatever is freshest." I nodded again, turning to leave when his voice stopped me, this time in Russian. "И поторопись, девочка. Я не привык ждать." And hurry up, little girl. I'm not used to waiting. The dismissive tone, more than the words themselves, made something flare inside me. Exhaustion, frustration from the long shift, the lingering grief of my grandmother's death. Whatever it was, it momentarily overrode my survival instincts. «Конечно, господин. Терпение. Добродетель даже для людей в вашем положении», I replied in flawless Russian. "Of course, sir. Patience is a virtue even for people in your position." The effect was instantaneous. His hand, which had been carelessly adjusting his cufflink, froze mid-motion. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees as those steel-gray eyes snapped to mine, all pretense of disinterest vanishing. What I'd said wasn't remarkable. A simple, if slightly impertinent response. But something in my words had triggered a reaction so visceral that even his guards tensed, hands moving subtly toward their concealed weapons. "What did you say?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet, still in Russian. I swallowed, suddenly aware that I'd made a terrible mistake. "Я извиняюсь, если, I apologize if—" "Your name," he cut me off, switching to English. "Your full name." "Anna," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Anna Petrova." Something flickered across his face. Recognition? Shock? I couldn't tell. Whatever it was vanished as quickly as it had appeared, replaced by a mask of cool composure. Anna Petrova, he repeated, each syllable deliberate, as if testing the weight of my name on his tongue. Bring the vodka. Then we'll talk. It wasn't a request. It was a command. I nodded and fled to the bar, my hands trembling as I placed the order. What had I done? What about my simple Russian phrase had caused such a reaction? You look like you've seen a ghost, remarked Mikhail, the bartender, as he poured the expensive vodka with practiced precision. What's wrong? The man at table 12, I whispered. Do you know who he is? Mikhail's eyes darted toward the table, and his face paled. That's Maxim Volkov. What did you do, Anna? The name meant nothing to me, but Mikhail's reaction told me everything I needed to know. I spoke Russian to him. He said something rude, and I responded. I didn't think. You spoke Russian to Volkov? Mikhail hissed, nearly dropping the bottle. Are you insane? That man owns half of Brighton Beach. The other half is too afraid to admit he owns them too. My stomach turned to ice. A mafia boss. I'd talked back to a mafia boss. Here. Mikhail pushed the vodka toward me, along with a small plate of pickled herring and black bread. Don't make him wait longer. And Anna, whatever you do, don't mention where you learned Russian. I frowned. Why would that matter? Mikhail just shook his head. Trust me. It matters. With shaking hands, I carried the tray back to the table. Volkov's eyes never left me as I approached, tracking my movements with the focus of a predator. I set down the vodka and Zakuski with care, struggling to keep my hands steady. Will there be anything else, sir? I asked, proud that my voice didn't betray my fear. Sit, he said, gesturing to the empty chair beside him. I glanced around nervously. Sir, I'm working. I can't. Victor won't mind, he said. And as if summoned by magic, my manager appeared at my elbow. Take your break, Anna, Victor said, his usual imperious tone replaced by something approaching deference. Mr. Volkov has requested your company. Before I could protest, Victor had disappeared, leaving me no choice but to sink into the chair beside the most dangerous man I'd ever encountered. Volkov dismissed his guards with a subtle nod, and they retreated to a respectful distance, close enough to act if needed, but far enough to give us privacy. Where did you learn that phrase? Volkov asked without preamble, his voice low. I blinked in confusion. Which phrase, sir? Patience is a virtue even for people in your position, he quoted. Those exact words. I don't understand, I stammered. It's just a saying. My grandmother used to tell me, your grandmother. He interrupted, leaning forward slightly. What was her name? A warning bell sounded in my head. Mikhail's caution about not revealing where I'd learned Russian echoed in my thoughts. Why do you want to know about my grandmother? I asked, my voice smaller than I intended. Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. Answer the question, Anna Petrova. The way he said my name sent a shiver down my spine. Elena, I whispered. Elena Petrova. She died 3 years ago. Volkov went still, his expression unreadable. He reached for the vodka, downed it in one smooth motion, then set the glass down with deliberate care. Elena Petrova from Odessa? My breath caught. Yes, how did you... And your mother? What was her name? My confusion deepened. Katya. She died when I was a baby. I never knew her. He closed his eyes briefly, and when he opened them, there was something new in his gaze, something that looked almost like pain. Do you know who your father is, Anna? He asked, his voice strangely gentle now. I shook my head. Grandmother said he was an American businessman who abandoned my mother when she got pregnant. I don't even know his name. Volkov reached into his jacket, a move that made his guards tense until they realized he was simply retrieving his phone. He tapped the screen a few times, then turned it toward me. The photo showed a much younger version of my grandmother, her arm around a beautiful young woman with my same dark hair and green eyes, my mother. I'd seen the picture before, one of the few my grandmother had kept. But what I hadn't seen was the third person in the photo, partially cut out of the version my grandmother had shown me. A young man with dark hair and steel-gray eyes, his arm protectively wrapped around my mother's waist. "That's my mother," I whispered, then looked up at Volkov in confusion. "But how do you have this picture? Who is that man?" Volkov put the phone away, his movements careful, controlled. "That phrase you repeated, about patience being a virtue. It wasn't just something your grandmother said. It was a code phrase, used between your grandmother and me, many years ago." "I don't understand." "No, you wouldn't." He studied me for a long moment. "Your mother and I, we were to be married. But there were complications, people who wanted me dead, people who would hurt anyone close to me." My heart began to race as the implications of his words sank in. "I sent Katya away to protect her. Yelena, your grandmother, arranged everything. New identities, new lives in America." His jaw tightened. "I was told there was an accident, that both Katya and her child, you, had died." The restaurant around us faded away as the ground seemed to shift beneath my feet. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying, Anna Petrovna," he replied, his voice barely audible, "that the American businessman your grandmother told you about doesn't exist. Your father didn't abandon you." He reached across the table, his fingers brushing against my cheek with unexpected gentleness. "Your father is sitting right in front of you." The world spun around me. I gripped the edge of the table, trying to anchor myself as 25 years of believing I was unwanted, abandoned, suddenly cracked and shattered. "No," I whispered. "That's not possible. Grandmother would have told me. Would she? The same grandmother who used one of our secret code phrases as a common saying? Who cut me out of every photograph? Who told you your father was an American who abandoned you?" His eyes darkened. "Yelena took you from me, Anna. She made me believe you were dead." I stood abruptly, nearly knocking over my chair. "I need to go." "Anna." He reached for my wrist, but I pulled away. "I need a moment. Please." Something in my face must have convinced him, because he nodded, releasing me. "Don't run, Anushka. Not now that I've found you." The use of my grandmother's pet name for me sent another shock through my system. I turned and fled toward the back of the restaurant, pushing through the kitchen doors and out into the alley behind Natasha's. The cool night air hit my face and I gulped it down, trying to steady my racing heart. This couldn't be happening. The most feared man in Brighton Beach couldn't be my father. My grandmother couldn't have lied to me my entire life, but even as I denied it, pieces began falling into place. My grandmother's paranoia about strangers, our frequent moves throughout my childhood, her insistence that I never tell anyone about our Russian background, the way she'd stiffened whenever news about the Russian Mafia appeared on television, and my mother's eyes in that photograph. The same steel gray as the man sitting at table 12, Anna. I whirled around to find Victor standing in the doorway, his usual smug expression replaced by one of genuine concern. "He's asking for you," Victor said quietly. "Whatever is happening between you and Volkov, be careful. Men like him don't take rejection well." I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite the warm summer night. "Did you know? About him? About me?" Victor shook his head. "I only know that Maxim Volkov doesn't speak to waitresses, doesn't show personal photos to strangers, and doesn't let people walk away from him." He hesitated. "But he's letting you set the pace. That means something." I closed my eyes, trying to think. I could run, disappear, start over somewhere new, just as my grandmother had taught me to do whenever trouble found us. But I was tired of running, tired of not knowing who I was or where I came from. If this man, this dangerous, powerful man, was truly my father, didn't I deserve to hear his side of the story? "I'll come back in," I said finally, "but I need answers, not threats or intimidation." Victor nodded, looking relieved. "I'll tell him." As Victor disappeared back into the restaurant, I took one final deep breath of night air. My life had been upended in the space of a single conversation, all because I'd responded to a rude comment in Russian. Whatever happened next, there would be no going back to the life I'd known this morning. I squared my shoulders and walked back inside, toward the man who claimed to be my father. toward answers I wasn't sure I was ready to hear, toward a future suddenly as uncertain as my past had become. The walk back to Volkov's table felt like crossing a minefield. Every eye in the restaurant seemed fixed on me, though I knew it was just my imagination. To them, I was still just a waitress, invisible unless they needed something. They couldn't see how my world had just imploded. Volkov stood as I approached, a gentleman's gesture that seemed incongruous with what I knew about him. He dismissed his guards with a subtle flick of his fingers, and they retreated further, giving us privacy while maintaining their watchful presence. "Shall we go somewhere more private?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. I shook my head. "No, here is fine. Public was safer. Witnesses meant protection." A faint smile touched his lips, as if he understood my reasoning and approved of my caution. "Very well." He gestured to the chair beside him, and after a moment's hesitation, I sat. For several long seconds, neither of us spoke. I studied his face, searching for resemblances I might have missed before. The shape of his eyes, the set of his jaw. Yes, there were echoes of my own features there, subtle but unmistakable now that I was looking for them. "You have questions," he said finally. "A lifetime of them," I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. "But let's start with the most obvious. If you're my father, why didn't you look for me? For 25 years, I believed you wanted nothing to do with me." Something dark flashed across his face. "Because I thought you were dead, Anushka. Your grandmother—" He paused, visibly composing himself. "Yelena told me there had been an accident, that Katya and her unborn child had died. She showed me newspaper clippings, death certificates, all forgeries, I now realize. But why would she do that? Why separate us?" Volkov reached for the vodka bottle, pouring himself another measure. He offered me the glass, but I shook my head. "Your grandmother never approved of me," he said after taking a sip. "Even before I became what I am now. I was from the wrong side of Odessa, with the wrong connections, the wrong ambitions." His lips twisted in a humorless smile. "The only thing I had going for me was how much your mother loved me." He set down the glass, his fingers lingering on the stem. "And I loved her. More than anything. Despite everything. The shock, the disbelief, the lingering suspicion that this was all an elaborate lie. I felt a pang in my chest at the raw grief in his voice. "What happened to her? To my mother?" I asked quietly. Grandmother would never talk about it. "A car accident. Real, not fabricated." His voice hardened. "But the circumstances were complicated." "Complicated how?" He studied me for a moment, as if debating how much to reveal. "I had enemies, even then. People who would target those I cared about to get to me." A cold realization washed over me. "Are you saying my mother was murdered? Because of you?" His silence was answer enough. I pressed my fingers to my temples, trying to process this new horror. "So grandmother was right to take me away, to hide me from you." "No." The word came out sharp, almost violent. "Yelena should have told me the truth. I would have protected you. I would have moved heaven and earth to keep you safe." "The way you kept my mother safe," the words escaped before I could stop them, bitter and accusing. I expected anger, threats. Instead, pain flashed across his face, raw and unguarded, before his expression smoothed back into careful neutrality. "I made mistakes," he admitted quietly. "I was young, arrogant. I thought my growing power would shield those I loved." His jaw tightened. "I was wrong." We fell silent again, the weight of the past hanging between us. Around us, the restaurant continued its evening rhythm, waiters gliding between tables, the soft clink of silverware against china, murmured conversations, while my entire existence rearranged itself. "I don't know what you want from me," I said finally. "I'm not part of your world. I'm just a waitress trying to finish college." Something that might have been pride flickered in his eyes. "College? What are you studying?" "Linguistics and international relations," I answered, surprised by his interest. "I graduate next semester. Your mother would be proud," he said softly. She was brilliant with languages, too. The mention of my mother sent another pang through my chest. All my life, I'd had only fragments of her, A handful of photos, my grandmother's reluctant stories, the Russian lullabies she'd sung to me before I was old enough to remember. I have her diaries, Volkov said, as if reading my thoughts. Letters she wrote. Photos. Things I've kept safe all these years. Believing they were all I had left of her, my heart stuttered. You'd share those with me? They're yours by right. He reached into his jacket again, this time withdrawing a business card. He placed it on the table between us. My private number. When you're ready, call me. We have much to discuss. I made no move to take the card. What makes you think I want anything to do with you? I lowered my voice, leaning in slightly. You're a criminal. I'm a businessman with interests that sometimes operate in gray areas. He corrected mildly. And I'm your father. DNA doesn't make you a father. No, he agreed, but it's a start. I couldn't argue with that. Whatever else he might be, this man was my blood, the missing piece of my identity I'd wondered about all my life. I need time, I said, to think, to process all this. He nodded, seemingly unsurprised. Of course, but there's something else you should know. His expression grew serious. Once word gets out about who you are, and it will, your life will change. A chill ran down my spine. What do you mean? My enemies will see you as leverage, a way to get to me. His voice remained calm, but his eyes had hardened. You'll need protection. I don't want protection. I want my normal life back. That's no longer an option, Anushka. There was genuine regret in his voice. The moment you spoke that phrase to me, your old life ended. I'm sorry for that. Anger flared, hot and sudden. So I'm just supposed to accept that? Let you take over my life because of a relationship I didn't even know existed until an hour ago? No, he said, surprising me again. You're supposed to make your own choices, but with full awareness of the consequences. I looked around the restaurant, suddenly paranoid. Were there people watching us even now? Would I walk home tonight and find myself followed, kidnapped, used as a pawn in some underworld power game? Stop, Volkov said, his voice gentler than I'd heard it yet. You're safe for now. No one else knows who you are to me. But they will. Eventually, he conceded. Which is why we need to prepare. We don't need to do anything, I said, rising from my chair. I need to finish my shift and go home. I need to think. He made no move to stop me, but his voice followed as I turned to leave. The card, Anna. Reluctantly, I took it, slipping it into my pocket. And Anna, he added, his tone making me pause. Don't go to your apartment tonight. I turned back, alarm rising. Why not? Precaution, he said simply. Stay with a friend, somewhere unexpected. You're scaring me. Good. Fear will keep you vigilant. He stood, straightening his already immaculate suit. I'll be in touch tomorrow. With that, he placed several $100 bills on the table, an outrageous tip for a glass of vodka and a plate of zakuski, and walked toward the exit, his security detail falling into formation around him. I watched him go. This stranger who was my father. This dangerous man who had upended my entire existence with a few sentences. Only when the door closed behind him did I realize I was shaking. Anna? It was Victor, hovering nearby with an anxious expression. Everything okay? I nodded mechanically, though nothing was further from the truth. Fine, I need to finish my shift. Victor's eyes darted to the table, widening at the stack of bills Volkov had left. Take the rest of the night off, he said. Whatever that was about, he gestured vaguely at where Volkov had sat. It seems more important than serving drinks. I should have argued, insisted on staying. My rent was due next week, and I needed every hour of pay I could get. But the thought of plastering on a smile and taking orders after what had just happened was unbearable. Thank you, I managed, already untying my apron. I'll make up the hours tomorrow. Victor nodded, though we both knew tomorrow might bring changes neither of us could imagine. I changed quickly in the staff room, trading my waitress uniform for jeans and a worn NYU sweatshirt. As I shouldered my bag and headed for the rear exit, my fingers brushed against the hard edge of Volkov's business card in my pocket. The night air had cooled, and I pulled my jacket tighter as I stepped onto the quiet Brooklyn street. Don't go to your apartment tonight, Volkov's warning echoed in my mind, sending fresh adrenaline coursing through me. Was it a genuine concern for my safety or a manipulation tactic? I had no way of knowing. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through contacts. Who could I stay with on such short notice? And what would I tell them? Sorry to bother you, but I just found out my father is a Russian Mafia boss, and now I might be in danger. I settled on May, my roommate from sophomore year. She worked nights at a hospital in Manhattan, which meant her place would be empty, and she'd always told me I could crash on her couch anytime. A text and a quick subway ride later, I was letting myself into May's small Queens apartment with the spare key she kept above her doorframe. The familiar scent of her jasmine incense greeted me, and some of the tension eased from my shoulders. I was safe here. Anonymous. I collapsed onto her couch, exhaustion crashing over me in waves. The events of the night played on loop in my mind, fragments of conversation swirling like debris in a storm. Your father is sitting right in front of you. Your mother and I were to be married. My enemies will see you as leverage. My phone buzzed, startling me from my thoughts. An unknown number flashed on the screen, followed by a text message. You're being watched. Stay inside. I'm handling it. My heart leapt into my throat. I moved to the window, peering carefully through the blinds at the street below. Nothing seemed out of place. No suspicious vehicles, no lurking figures. Just the normal late-night quiet of a residential street. Another text arrived. Not from the street. The building across from your friends. 3rd floor, 2nd window from the left. Ice flooded my veins. How did he know where I was? I hadn't told anyone where I was going. Hadn't used a credit card or rideshare app that could be traced. As if anticipating my question, a 3rd message appeared. I had you followed for your protection. My men are taking care of the surveillance now. I stared at the message in disbelief, torn between gratitude that someone was watching out for me and fury at the invasion of my privacy. Before I could decide which emotion to act on, movement across the street caught my eye. Shadows shifting against shadows, too deliberate to be coincidental. Then a brief flash, like light reflecting off metal, followed by stillness. My phone buzzed again. It's done. You're safe for tonight. We'll talk tomorrow. I sank back onto the couch, my legs suddenly unable to support me. This was real. All of it. Within hours of discovering my true parentage, I'd become a pawn in some dangerous game I didn't understand and couldn't control. Sleep was impossible. I spent the night alternating between pacing the small apartment and sitting vigil by the window, jumping at every sound. By dawn, my eyes burned with exhaustion, and my thoughts had circled through fear, anger, and disbelief so many times they'd worn a path in my mind. As the first light of morning filtered through the blinds, my phone buzzed with another text from the unknown number, from Volkov. Car waiting downstairs, black Mercedes. Driver's name is Alexei. He'll bring you to me. I hesitated, my thumbs hovering over the keyboard. Part of me wanted to refuse, to run as far as possible from this man and the chaos he'd brought into my life. But another part, the part that had always wondered about my father, that had created countless fantasies about who he might be, needed answers only he could provide. I have class at 11, I texted back. His response was immediate. You'll be there in time. I gathered my few belongings, scribbled a note of thanks for May, and headed downstairs. As promised, a sleek black Mercedes idled at the curb, a mountain of a man in a dark suit standing beside it. He straightened as I approached, opening the rear door with a deferential nod. Miss Petrova, he said, his accent thicker than Volkov's. I am Alexei. I slid into the back seat, clutching my bag on my lap like a shield. Where are we going? Brighton Beach, Alexei replied, closing my door and moving around to the driver's side. Mr. Volkov's residence. The car pulled away from the curb, merging into the early morning traffic. Through the tinted windows, New York City slid past in a blur of concrete and glass. We crossed the bridge into Brooklyn, the Manhattan skyline receding behind us like a dream. I should have been terrified, should have demanded to be let out, called the police, done anything but sit quietly as I was driven to the home of a man I knew to be dangerous. But beneath the fear and confusion, a strange calm had settled over me. For the first time in my life, I was moving toward answers, rather than away from them. The car turned onto a quiet, tree-lined street of elegant brownstones. a far cry from the gaudy mansions I'd imagined a Mafia boss would inhabit. We stopped before a distinguished building with wrought iron details and meticulously maintained window boxes. "We're here," Alexei announced, coming around to open my door. I stepped out, gazing up at what was apparently my father's home. Like the man himself, it projected power and taste in equal measure, imposing yet understated. Before Alexei could escort me to the entrance, the front door opened, and Volkov himself appeared. Gone was the formal suit from last night, replaced by casual slacks and a simple black sweater that somehow made him look more approachable and more dangerous all at once. "Anushka," he said, his voice warming as he spoke my name. "Thank you for coming." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Now that I was here, the reality of the situation hit me with full force. I was about to step into the home, into the world, of a man whose very existence had been kept secret from me my entire life. "Please," he said, gesturing toward the open door. "We have much to discuss." Taking a deep breath, I crossed the threshold, leaving behind the last remnants of my old life and stepping into a new reality I couldn't begin to comprehend. Inside, the house was a study in restrained elegance. Hardwood floors covered with antique rugs, walls adorned with what looked like original artwork, furnishings that whispered old money rather than shouted new wealth. "This way," Volkov said, leading me through a formal living room into a sun-filled kitchen at the back of the house. To my surprise, the space was warm and inviting, with copper pots hanging from a rack and fresh flowers on the center island. "Tea?" he offered, moving with unexpected domesticity to fill a kettle. "Please," I replied, settling onto one of the stools at the island. As he prepared the tea with practiced motions, I studied him more openly than I'd dared the night before. In the morning light, the resemblance between us was even more apparent. The same high cheekbones, the same slight furrow between our brows when concentrating. "You're staring," he observed without looking up. "I'm trying to reconcile the dangerous man I've heard about with this." I gestured vaguely at him and the domestic scene. He smiled faintly as he set a steaming cup before me. "We all contain multitudes, Anushka." He took the stool across from me. "Even Russian Mafia bosses." "Is that what you are? Officially?" "Officially, I'm a businessman with interests in real estate, imports, and hospitality." His smile turned wry. "Unofficially, let's just say I maintain order in certain communities that don't trust the conventional authorities." "You're a criminal," I said bluntly. "By some definitions, yes." He sipped his tea, unruffled by my accusation. "By others, I'm a necessary alternative to a system that has never served our people well." I wanted to argue, to reject his self-justification, but I wasn't here to debate the morality of organized crime. I was here for answers. "You said my mother died in a car accident," I began. "What really happened?" Volkov set down his cup, his expression grave. "Are you sure you want to know this now? I've spent 25 years not knowing. I'm done with secrets." He nodded slowly. "Very well. But remember, you asked." He drew a deep breath. It wasn't just an accident. The brake lines in her car had been cut. She was 7 months pregnant with you at the time. My hand flew to my mouth. How did I survive? A miracle. The doctors performed an emergency C-section. You were premature, fragile. His voice roughened. "Elena told me neither of you had made it." "Who did it? Who killed her?" "A rival organization, a message meant for me." His eyes darkened with old rage. "They've long since paid for their mistake." I didn't ask what that payment had entailed. Some details were better left unknown. "After I believed you both dead, I changed," he continued. "Became harder, more ruthless, built my organization into what it is today." He looked at me directly. "I'm not a good man, Anna, but I was a man who loved your mother with everything I had, and I would have loved you just as much." The simple honesty in his voice threatened to crack the protective shell I'd tried to maintain. "Why should I believe any of this? You could be manipulating me for some reason I don't understand." In answer, he stood and left the room, returning moments later with a small wooden box. He placed it on the island between us, his hand lingering on the lid. I've carried this with me for 25 years, he said quietly. Open it. With trembling fingers, I lifted the lid. Inside lay a collection of items. A faded photograph of a young woman, my mother, laughing at the camera. A delicate gold chain with a small emerald pendant. A handwritten letter in Cyrillic. And nestled among these treasures, a tiny pink hospital bracelet labeled Baby Girl Petrova. My bracelet. From the day I was born. How? I whispered, lifting it with reverent fingers. I bribed a nurse to give me something. Anything from the daughter I thought had died. He answered. I needed something tangible to mourn. Tears blurred my vision, as 25 years of believing myself unwanted collapsed under the weight of this simple proof of a father's grief. There's more, Volkov said gently. Letters your mother wrote to you while you were in her womb. Photos from when we were young, her journals. All for you, when you're ready. I closed the box carefully, overwhelmed. I don't know what to feel, I admitted. Everything I thought I knew about myself, about my life, was a lie. Not everything, he countered. Yelena loved you. She raised you well, made you strong, independent. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Taught you to answer back to men who disrespect you, even dangerous ones. Despite everything, I found myself smiling back. She did that. Yes, she was wrong to take you from me, he said, his voice hardening slightly. But her motives were pure. She wanted to protect you from my world. And now? Now you're part of it whether either of us wants that or not. He leaned forward, his expression grave. People will have seen us together last night. Questions will be asked. Connections will be made. It's only a matter of time before my enemies learn about you. Fear knotted in my stomach. What does that mean for me? It means changes, security, precautions. He held up a hand as I started to protest. I'm not asking you to abandon your life, Anushka. Your studies, your friends. Those can continue. But certain adjustments will be necessary. What kind of adjustments? I asked, already dreading the answer. Volkov's expression remained calm, but his eyes were watchful, gauging my reaction. For starters, you'll need to move. Your current apartment isn't secure. Move? I can't afford. Money isn't an issue, he interrupted smoothly. I own several properties with adequate security. The implication that I would accept his financial support so easily irritated me. I've managed on my own this long. I don't need your money. Something like respect flickered in his eyes. Your independence is admirable, but this isn't about pride, Anna. It's about survival. I wrapped my hands around my teacup, drawing comfort from its warmth. You're asking me to uproot my entire life based on a danger I haven't even seen evidence of. The man watching your friend's apartment last night was evidence enough, he countered. If my people hadn't intervened, he left the sentence hanging, but the implication was clear. Who was he? I asked, despite myself. A freelancer, hired to track unusual movements in my circle. He shrugged slightly. Standard practice in our world. When someone like me shows interest in a waitress, people notice. Our world. Not my world. The distinction wasn't lost on me. I have classes, work, friends, I said. I can't just disappear into your protection and forget my life. I'm not asking you to. His tone was patient. Attend your classes. Keep your job if you wish, though it's hardly necessary now. See your friends. But do it all with proper security measures in place. Like bodyguards following me around campus. I scoffed. That won't draw attention at all. There are more subtle approaches. He regarded me thoughtfully. You're studying linguistics and international relations, yes? Perhaps an internship at one of my legitimate businesses would be appropriate. It would justify security without raising questions. I narrowed my eyes. Are any of your businesses actually legitimate? A smile played at the corner of his mouth. Many are. Import-export, real estate, a chain of restaurants including Natasha's. That stopped me short. You own Natasha's? Is that why Victor was so afraid of you? Victor has reason to be cautious around me, yes. Something dangerous flashed across his face before disappearing, but that's not relevant now. I filed that information away for later consideration. So what happens next? You set me up in some fortress with bodyguards, and I just adjust to being a Mafia princess? His expression hardened slightly. This isn't a movie, Anushka. There are no Mafia princesses, and there are only targets and assets. Right now, you're potentially both. The bluntness of his assessment sent a chill through me. This wasn't a game or a fantasy. The danger was real. I need time, I said, to process all of this, to decide what I want. Volkov nodded, as if he'd expected this response. Of course, but while you're deciding, allow me to implement basic security measures. He rose from his stool, moving to a nearby drawer to retrieve a small box. Starting with this, he slid the box toward me. Inside was a sleek smartphone. It's secure, he explained. Encrypted, untraceable. My number and Alexei's are programmed in. If you need anything at all, call. I hesitated before taking it. Accepting the phone felt like the first step on a path I wasn't sure I wanted to follow. What about my current phone? Keep it for appearances, but understand it can be monitored, tracked. His eyes met mine, serious. No sensitive conversations. No references to me or your connection to me. I slipped the new phone into my pocket, feeling the weight of it like an anchor to this new reality. I'll have Alexei drive you to your class, Volkov said, glancing at his watch. We'll talk more later, when you've had time to think. As if summoned by his name, Alexei appeared in the doorway, car keys in hand. Thank you for the tea, I said formally, rising from my stool. It seemed an inadequate response to everything that had transpired. But I didn't know what else to say. Volkov walked me to the door, maintaining a careful distance as if sensing my need for space. At the threshold, he paused. Anushka, he said, his voice softer than I'd heard it yet. I've missed 25 years of your life. I don't expect to make up for that overnight. But I hope, with time, you might allow me to know you. The simple sincerity in his voice threatened to crack my emotional defenses. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak, and hurried to the waiting car. As Alexei drove me toward campus, I stared out at the passing city streets, trying to reconcile the life I'd had yesterday with the one stretching before me now. The secure phone in my pocket felt like a tether to a world I hadn't asked to enter, but couldn't entirely reject. After all, wasn't this what I'd always wanted? To know where I came from, who I was? But the reality was more complicated than any childhood fantasy. My father wasn't just any man. He was Maxim Volkov, a name that apparently inspired fear throughout Brighton Beach and beyond. A man who spoke of enemies and security measures with calm certainty. A man who'd admitted to changing, becoming harder and more ruthless after losing my mother and believing he'd lost me. What did that mean exactly? What had he done in those 25 years? What blood was on his hands? Did I even want to know? The car stopped in front of my campus building, jarring me from my thoughts. I'll wait here, Alexei said, his first words since leaving Brighton Beach. To drive you home after class. That's not necessary. I started to argue, but his impassive expression made it clear this wasn't a point he'd concede. Mr. Volkov's instructions, he said simply. I sighed, shouldering my bag. Fine, I'll be 2 hours. Alexei nodded, settling back in his seat to wait. My advanced Russian literature class had never felt so mundane. As Professor Baranova discussed the symbolism in Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, I found it increasingly difficult to focus. The irony wasn't lost on me, studying Russian literature while my own Russian drama unfolded in real time. Ms. Petrova, Professor Baranova's voice cut through my distraction. Your thoughts on Raskolnikov's moral justification? I straightened in my seat, scrambling to formulate an answer. He believed extraordinary men were above conventional morality. I managed, that they could transgress moral boundaries for a greater purpose. The professor nodded, satisfied, and moved on to another student, but her question lingered in my mind. Wasn't that what Volkov had implied earlier? That his criminal activities served some greater good for his people? When class ended, I gathered my things slowly, reluctant to return to Alexei's waiting car. The weight of decisions pressed down on me. What to believe, who to trust, how to proceed in this new reality where I was Maxim Volkov's daughter. My phone, my regular phone, buzzed with a text from my friend Lily. Coffee? I'm at the usual spot. I hesitated, glancing toward the exit where I knew Alexei waited. A coffee with Lily felt like a lifeline to normalcy, a chance to breathe before diving back into the chaos my life had become. I texted back, "Be there in 5, then headed toward the campus cafe. Lily waved from our favorite corner table as I entered. With her bright blue hair and collection of literary tattoos, she was impossible to miss, and exactly the grounding presence I needed. "You look like hell," she greeted me cheerfully. "Bad shift last night. You have no idea," I muttered, dropping into the chair across from her. She pushed a steaming cup toward me. "Already ordered your usual. Extra shot of espresso. You look like you need it." I smiled gratefully, wrapping my hands around the warm cup. "Thanks." So what happened? Victor being a jerk again? I hesitated. What could I possibly tell her? Sorry. I just discovered my father is a Russian Mafia boss, and now I might be in danger from his enemies? "Family stuff," I said vaguely. "Found out some things about my father." Lily's eyes widened. "Your father? I thought you didn't know who he was." I didn't. Until last night. I took a sip of coffee, using the moment to choose my words carefully. Turns out, my grandmother lied to me. He didn't abandon us. He thought we were dead. "Holy shit," Lily breathed. That's huge, Anna. Did you meet him?" I nodded, unable to elaborate further without entering dangerous territory. "What's he like? What does he do?" Lily leaned forward, eager for details. I searched for words that weren't lies but wouldn't reveal too much. Intense, successful, in business. That's it? In business? Lily rolled her eyes. "Come on, I need more than that. Is he married? Do you have secret siblings? Is he rich?" Before I could formulate safe answers to her barrage of questions, movement at the cafe entrance caught my attention. Alexei stood in the doorway, his massive frame and dark suit conspicuously out of place among the college students. Lily followed my gaze. Who's the men in black reject? I closed my eyes briefly, cursing silently. Someone who works for my father, I admitted. He's giving me a ride. Lily's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Okay, what aren't you telling me? Because that guy looks like security, not an Uber driver. It's complicated," I said, rising from my chair. "I promise I'll explain more when I can, but right now, I have to go." "Anna," Lily began, concern replacing curiosity in her expression. "I'll call you," I promised, gathering my things. "I just need some time to figure things out." As I approached Alexei, I didn't bother hiding my irritation. "I told you I'd be 2 hours. Mr. Volkov's orders changed," he replied impassively. "We need to leave now." A chill ran down my spine. "Why? What's happened?" Alexei's eyes scanned the cafe before returning to me. "Not here." The car. Dread pooled in my stomach as I followed him outside to the waiting Mercedes. As soon as the doors closed behind us, I demanded, "Tell me what's going on." "Mr. Volkov received information," Alexei said, pulling smoothly into traffic. "The man from last night wasn't working alone. Others are looking for you." "Who? Why?" "The Bratva faction from Queens. They've made connections between you and Mr. Volkov faster than anticipated." "And what does that mean for me?" Alexei's eyes met mine in the rearview mirror. "It means you need to disappear for a while, Miss Petrova, at least until Mr. Volkov can resolve the situation." The normalcy I'd been clinging to slipped further away with every word. "Disappear where?" "Somewhere safe," was all he said as the car accelerated toward an uncertain future. "I'm not going anywhere until I speak with him directly," I said, crossing my arms. "I want to hear this from Volkov himself." Alexei's expression remained impassive, but he reached into his jacket and retrieved a phone, identical to the one Volkov had given me. "Call him." I pulled out my new secure phone and dialed the only number programmed into it besides Alexei's. Volkov answered on the first ring. "Anushka," he said, his voice tense. "You're with Alexei?" "Yes. He says I need to disappear. What's going on?" A beat of silence. The situation has escalated. I've received credible information that Yuri Sokolov has connected you to me. And who is Yuri Sokolov? The head of the Queen's Bratva, Volkov explained, his tone grim. A particularly ambitious man who would consider you a valuable acquisition. The casual way he referenced my potential abduction sent a chill through me. I have finals in 3 weeks. I can't just vanish because some gangster might be interested in me. Your education is important, Volkov agreed, surprising me. But your safety is paramount. I have a property upstate, isolated, secure. You can continue your studies remotely while I resolve this situation. And how long will that take? A few weeks, perhaps a month. A month? I exclaimed. That's non-negotiable. Volkov cut in, his voice hardening. Sokolov is not someone to underestimate. His men have already been to your apartment. That stopped my protest cold. My apartment? When? An hour ago. They were thorough in their search. My stomach dropped as I imagined strangers pawing through my belongings, violating the small sanctuary I'd created for myself. Did they... I swallowed hard. Was anything destroyed? The damage is being repaired, Volkov said, which wasn't exactly an answer. I've sent people to retrieve your essential items. Clothes, books, your laptop. Anything else you need can be purchased. The efficiency with which he'd taken over my life both frightened and infuriated me. You had no right. I had every right, he interrupted. As your father and as someone who understands the danger you're in, the word father hit like a physical blow. 24 hours ago, I would have given anything to hear a man claim me as his daughter with such conviction. Now, the reality was far more complicated than the fantasy had ever been. I need to let people know, I said, thinking of Lily, my professors, my boss at Natasha's. I can't just disappear without a word. Alexei has a cover story prepared. A family emergency requiring your immediate return to Russia for a few weeks. It's believable and requires no detailed explanations. The thoroughness of his planning was unnerving. How long had he been preparing for this possibility? Since the moment he recognized me last night? This is happening too fast, I said, my voice smaller than I intended. Volkov's tone softened slightly. I know, Anushka, and I'm sorry for that, but sometimes fast is what keeps you alive. Those words hung between us, stark and unarguable. Fine, I conceded. But I want your promise this is temporary. That I'll be able to return to my life when it's safe. You have it, he said without hesitation. This is about protecting you, not controlling you. Never doubt that. I wanted to believe him, despite everything. The shock, the fear, the lingering suspicion that I was being manipulated. I wanted to trust that this man who shared my blood had my best interests at heart. I'll see you at the property tonight, Volkov continued. There are matters I need to attend to first. Matters I probably didn't want to know the details of. All right. Anushka, he added, his voice lowering, trust Alexei. He would give his life for you without hesitation, simply because you're my daughter. The call ended, leaving me with that unsettling thought as the car continued its journey out of the city. I glanced at Alexei's stoic profile, wondering what inspired such loyalty. Fear? Money? Something deeper? How long have you worked for Volkov? I asked, breaking the tense silence. Alexei's eyes met mine briefly in the rearview mirror. 15 years. Why? His massive shoulders lifted in a slight shrug. He saved my life, gave me purpose when I had none. Doing what? Exactly? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Keeping his world in order. And now, keeping you safe. I leaned back against the seat, processing this. You're comfortable with that? With what he does? Mr. Volkov is a complicated man, Alexei said carefully, but he protects what's his territory. He glanced at me again. His family. Family. Such a simple word for such a complex reality. Where are we going exactly? I asked, watching as the urban landscape gradually gave way to suburbs, then to more sparsely populated areas. Westchester County, Alexei replied. Mr. Volkov's estate is near the reservoir, very private, very secure. The car fell silent again as I watched New York City, the only home I'd ever known, recede in the distance. My mind raced with questions, fears, and the growing, uncomfortable awareness that my life had been irrevocably altered. 2 hours later, we turned onto a private road that wound through dense forest. After passing through an imposing gate with multiple security cameras, we continued for another mile before the trees opened to reveal a sprawling property centered around a stone manor house that looked like it belonged in the English countryside rather than upstate New York. "This is his?" I asked, unable to keep the awe from my voice. "One of several properties," Alexei confirmed, pulling up to the front entrance. "But this is where he comes when he needs peace." The term seemed incongruous with what I knew of Maxim Volkov, but I said nothing as Alexei opened my door and escorted me inside. The interior was unexpected, warm and elegant rather than ostentatious. Honey-colored wood, plush furnishings in jewel tones, walls lined with books, and windows that flooded the space with natural light. "Your rooms are upstairs," Alexei said, leading me toward a sweeping staircase. "Mr. Volkov thought you might want to rest before dinner." The suite he showed me to was larger than my entire apartment, with a sitting area, a massive 4-poster bed, and a bathroom that featured both a clawfoot tub and a shower big enough for 3 people. "Your things are in the closet," Alexei informed me. "If you need anything else, pick up the house phone and dial 0. Mrs. Petrenko, the housekeeper, will assist you." After Alexei left, I explored my new quarters in a daze. The closet had indeed been stocked with my clothes, neatly arranged by color and type, alongside several new items with designer tags still attached. My books sat on a shelf by a comfortable reading chair. My laptop waited on a desk beneath a window overlooking manicured gardens. It was surreal, this strange blend of my modest possessions within such opulent surroundings, like my life had been lifted from its foundations and inserted into someone else's reality. Exhaustion suddenly hit me like a physical blow. The past 24 hours caught up all at once. The shock, the fear, the uncertainty, the constant vigilance. I barely made it to the bed before collapsing. I woke to soft knocking and the realization that hours had passed. The room was now bathed in the golden light of late afternoon. "Miss Petrova?" A woman's voice, heavily accented. "Dinner will be served in 30 minutes. Mr. Volkov has arrived and asked me to inform you." "Thank you," I called back, sitting up and trying to orient myself. "I'll be down soon." I showered quickly and changed into fresh clothes, my own jeans and a new cashmere sweater I found among the items Volkov had provided. As I brushed my hair, I studied my reflection in the ornate mirror. Same green eyes, same dark hair, same face I'd known all my life. And yet, everything had changed. I was still Anna Petrova, waitress and linguistics student. But now I was also the daughter of Maxim Volkov, a man powerful and dangerous enough to uproot my entire existence within hours of discovering my identity. The question was, who would I be by the time this temporary situation resolved? I made my way downstairs, following the scent of food to a dining room where Volkov waited, rising as I entered. He'd changed since our morning meeting, now dressed in a simple button-down shirt and slacks that somehow made him look more approachable. "Anushka," he greeted me. "I hope you found everything comfortable." "It's all very nice," I said inadequately. But still a gilded cage. Something like approval flickered in his eyes. "You have your grandmother's directness. Please sit." A woman, presumably Mrs. Petrenko, appeared with steaming dishes: borscht, beef stroganoff, roasted vegetables. The familiar aromas transported me instantly to my grandmother's small kitchen, bringing an unexpected lump to my throat. "Your grandmother's recipes," Volkov explained, noting my reaction. "I had them recreated for you." The gesture was unexpectedly thoughtful and effective. It breached a small part of my defensive wall. "Thank you," I said softly. We ate in silence for a few moments before I gathered the courage to ask the question that had been plaguing me since our phone call. "What happens now? With Sokolov and everything?" Volkov set down his fork, his expression turning serious. "Now I send a message that you are under my protection, that any move against you will be considered a direct attack on me, with all the consequences that entails." "And what does that mean exactly?" I pressed. "What consequences?" His eyes met mine, unflinching. Are you sure you want that answer, Anushka? I need to understand what I'm part of, I insisted. No more lies, no more half-truths. Volkov studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Very well. In our world, threats must be backed by action. Sokolov needs to understand that pursuing you would cost more than he's willing to pay. You're going to kill him, I said flatly. Not if a less permanent solution presents itself, he replied, his tone almost casual. But I will do whatever is necessary to ensure your safety. The matter-of-fact way he discussed potential murder sent a chill through me. This was the reality of my father's world. Life and death decisions made over dinner, as casually as others might discuss business strategies. I don't want anyone dying because of me, I said, then hope Sokolov is intelligent enough to heed my warning. Volkov's expression softened slightly. This is not the introduction to fatherhood I would have chosen, Anushka, but know that everything I do now, I do to protect you. I looked away, unable to meet his gaze. That doesn't make it right. No, he agreed quietly. It doesn't. But right and necessary aren't always the same thing. The days at Volkov's estate blended together in a strange rhythm of luxury and confinement. I attended my classes remotely, my professors accommodating what they believed was a family emergency in Russia. I studied in the vast library, walked the grounds under the watchful eyes of security personnel, and slowly acclimated to a life that felt both alien and oddly familiar. Volkov himself was often absent, handling what he vaguely referred to as business matters, but our dinners together became a nightly ritual. During these meals, I pieced together fragments of my mother's story, of their relationship, of the life I might have had if things had gone differently. She was brilliant, Volkov told me one evening, his eyes distant with memory. Languages came to her like breathing. She could hear a phrase once and repeat it perfectly. Like you. I pushed my food around my plate, still uncomfortable with these glimpses into a past I'd never known. Grandmother never talked about her talents. Just that she was beautiful and kind. She was those things too, he acknowledged. But Katya was so much more. She had fire, determination. A faint smile touched his lips. She would have been proud of the woman you've become. Would she be proud of what you've become? I asked, the question escaping before I could reconsider. Volkov didn't flinch at the implied criticism. Perhaps not all of it, he conceded. But she would understand the choices I made after losing her, after believing I'd lost you. Violence, crime. That's what you chose. I chose power, he corrected. Because powerlessness cost me everything I loved. I had no response to that. How could I judge the path grief had led him down when I'd never experienced a loss so profound? On the 7th day of my exile, I was curled in a window seat in the library, translating Russian poetry for an assignment, when Alexei appeared in the doorway. Miss Petrova, he said, his usual stoic expression tinged with something I couldn't identify. Mr. Volkov requests your presence in his study. The formality in his tone alarmed me. Is something wrong? It's not my place to say, he replied, which was answer enough. I followed him through the manor's winding corridors to Volkov's private study, a room I'd not yet been invited to enter. Alexei knocked once, then opened the door without waiting for a response. Volkov stood by the window, his back to the door, phone pressed to his ear. He spoke rapidly in Russian, his tone carrying an edge I hadn't heard before. Even without understanding his words, the tension in his shoulders told me something significant had happened. He ended the call as I entered, turning to face me. A bruise darkened his left cheekbone, and a cut bisected his eyebrow. Whatever business he'd been handling had clearly turned physical. You're hurt, I said, surprising myself with how much the sight disturbed me. It's nothing, he dismissed, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. Please, sit. I did as he asked, noting the subtle wince as he lowered himself into his own chair. What happened? Is it Sokolov? The situation with Sokolov has been addressed, Volkov said carefully. That's not why I asked you here. Then what? I received a call from your friend Lily this morning, he interrupted. On my private line. My blood ran cold. What? How did she? Apparently, she copied my number from your phone when you weren't looking. Resourceful girl. There was a note of reluctant admiration in his voice. She's been investigating me, us, making connections. Panic flared. Is she in danger? Did you— She's fine, Volkov assured me quickly. I have no intention of harming your friend. But her curiosity poses a risk, to her, to you, to our arrangement. I slumped in relief, then tensed again as his words sank in. What did she say? She demanded to know what I'd done with you. Threatened to go to the police if I didn't produce you within 24 hours. His lips quirked in what might have been amusement. She's loyal. I respect that. Lily's just worried about me, I said defensively. I disappeared without much explanation. Which is why you need to speak with her, Volkov said. Reassure her. In person. I straightened, surprised by this unexpected concession. You're letting me go back to the city? Briefly, under controlled conditions. He leaned forward, wincing again. The situation with Sokolov has been contained, but not eliminated. Caution is still warranted. I wanted to press for details on what contained meant, but the prospect of returning to some semblance of normalcy, even temporarily, took precedence. When can I go? Tomorrow. Alexei will drive you. Volkov's expression turned serious. But Anna, this is not a return to your old life, not yet. You'll meet your friend, assure her of your well-being, and return here. Is that clear? I bristled at the command but nodded. And my classes? My apartment? We'll discuss more permanent arrangements after assessing the security situation, he said, which wasn't really an answer, one step at a time. I rose to leave, then hesitated, looking back at his injured face. What really happened with Sokolov? Volkov met my gaze steadily. Are you certain you want to know? I considered the question carefully. Did I want the truth, with all its likely violence and moral ambiguity? Or was ignorance preferable? Yes, I decided. No more secrets. He gestured for me to sit again. Very well. Sokolov refused to acknowledge my request for restraint regarding you. He saw you as leverage against me. His jaw tightened. A mistake he won't repeat. Did you kill him? I asked bluntly. No, Volkov replied. But I made it clear that his life, and the lives of those he values, exist only at my discretion. He touched the cut above his eye. He argued, forcefully, before accepting the new reality. I absorbed this, trying to reconcile the cultured man who discussed Russian poetry over dinner with the one who could threaten a rival's family without hesitation. How can you live like this? I asked quietly, with violence always a breath away. Something vulnerable flickered across his face. It's the only life I've known since losing your mother. Since believing I'd lost you, he looked away. But finding you, it changes things. What does that mean? It means I've been considering alternatives, he said carefully. Ways to extract myself from certain aspects of my business, to create a safer environment for you. The implication stunned me. You'd leave the Bratva? For me? Not immediately. Not completely. Such transitions require time, planning. His eyes met mine. But for the chance to know my daughter without fear shadowing every interaction? Yes. I would make changes. The sincerity in his voice cracked something in my carefully maintained defenses. For the first time since discovering his identity, I allowed myself to truly see him as my father. Flawed, dangerous, but also capable of change for the right reasons. I don't expect you to become someone else overnight, I said slowly. But I can't be part of that world, not ever. I'm not asking you to be, he assured me. I only ask for the chance to be in your life, on whatever terms you set. The enormity of the moment wasn't lost on me. This powerful, feared man was essentially placing himself at my mercy, allowing me to dictate the terms of our relationship. I need time, I said, to figure out what that means, what I want. Take all the time you need, he replied. I've waited 25 years to find you. I can be patient now. The next morning, Alexei drove me back to the city. The trip felt like emerging from a dream. The familiar skyline materializing through the car windows brought both relief and disorientation. We met Lily at a quiet cafe in the West Village, neutral territory that Volkov's security team had swept in advance. Her eyes widened at the sight of Alexei escorting me in, then narrowed in suspicion. I knew something was weird, she said, as I slid into the seat across from her. Are you okay? Are you being held against your will? Blink twice if... I'm fine, Lily, I interrupted, smiling despite myself. It's complicated, but I'm safe. Complicated? She repeated incredulously. Anna, you disappear for a week, and when I try to find you, I discover your father is Maxim freaking Volkov, the Russian mob boss. I winced, glancing around nervously. Could you say that a little louder? I don't think everyone in Manhattan heard you. Lily leaned forward, lowering her voice. Is it true? Is he really your father? I nodded, then spent the next hour explaining everything. The encounter at Natasha's, the revelation of my parentage, the threat from Sokolov, my temporary relocation to Volkov's estate. I omitted the more violent details, but gave her enough truth to satisfy her concern. That's insane, she breathed when I finished. Like Lifetime movie insane. Tell me about it, I agreed, sipping my now cold coffee. So what happens now? She asked. Are you like the heir to a criminal empire? I laughed despite the gravity of the situation. God, no. That's not what either of us wants. I hesitated, then added, he's talking about making changes, stepping back from certain aspects of his business. Lily's eyebrows shot up. Seriously? The notorious Maxim Volkov going straight? Not exactly, I clarified, but evolving. For me. Wow. Lily sat back, processing this. That's actually kind of beautiful, in a twisted way. I smiled wryly. My life has become one big in a twisted way. We talked until Alexei discreetly checked his watch, signaling it was time to leave. As I hugged Lily goodbye, she whispered, Be careful, but also, don't waste this chance, Anna. Not everyone gets to rewrite their story this way. Her words stayed with me during the drive back to Westchester, echoing as we passed through the estate gates, and I saw Volkov waiting on the steps. He'd come home early from his business to greet me, a small but significant gesture. As I stepped from the car, our eyes met, and for the first time, I allowed myself to truly see him, not as the fearsome Maxim Volkov, but as my father. A man who had lost everything, built a dangerous life in the aftermath, and now stood ready to reshape that life for a daughter he'd just found. Welcome back, Anushka, he said simply. I climbed the steps toward him, toward a future neither of us could fully predict. I think, I said carefully, we should talk about those changes you mentioned. Something like hope flickered in his steel-gray eyes. My eyes. I'd like that. And in that moment, standing on the threshold between my old life and whatever came next, I made my choice. Not to embrace his world, but to help him find a path out of it. Not to forget the man he had been, but to encourage the man he could become. It wouldn't be easy. The shadows of his past would follow us both. There would be complications, dangers, difficult truths to face, but for the first time in my life, I wasn't facing the unknown alone. I had found my father, and somehow, against all odds, he had found a way back to the man he might have been, a man worthy of being my father. So, I said, stepping through the doorway beside him, let's begin.